Thomas opened his eyes slowly. At first, he saw only the dim shape of fabric above him, swaying gently. A faint scent of wood and something metallic filled the air. His head felt heavy, and his body ached, as if he had run a great distance. When his vision cleared, he realized he was lying on a simple bedroll inside a canvas tent. The sound of soft footsteps drew his attention. Across from him sat a young woman with calm, steady eyes. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she wore a weathered exploration jacket with patches of dust. In her hands was a steaming cup of something warm. She gave him a small smile. "You talked about me in your sleep," she said in a gentle voice. Thomas blinked. "What?" His throat felt dry, and his voice came out rough. She nodded, still smiling. "I don't know what it meant, but you said my name several times." Thomas sat up slowly. "Your name?" "Mira," she replied. "And you are Thomas. I checked the name on your ID tag." She placed the cup on a small crate beside him. "Drink this. You need it." He took the cup and sipped. The taste was sharp but comforting, like a mix of herbs and minerals. His mind raced, trying to understand the situation. The last thing he remembered was walking across the open plains of Sirel 4, scanning for unusual energy readings. His team had been spread out in a search pattern, communicating through short-range comms. Then there had been a bright flash, a sound like rushing wind, and nothing after that. "How did I get here?" he asked. "I found you about 2 kilometers. From here, near the edge of the low ridge," Mira explained. "You were unconscious, your scanner was damaged, and there were no signs of your team." Thomas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "I need to find them." "You will," Mira said. "But you need your strength first. Out here, you do not move without a plan. This planet is calm one moment and dangerous the next." Thomas looked around the tent. It was small, but organized. A portable heater hummed in the corner. Several sealed containers sat along one wall. A faint light entered through a gap in the tent flap, and beyond it, he could hear the sound of the wind. "You're not part of my crew," Thomas said slowly. "No," Mira replied. "I am here on a separate mission. We might have the same goal, but I work alone. Usually." Thomas studied her for a moment. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something in her eyes that told him she had seen many things, and most of them were not pleasant. "What were you doing near me?" he asked. "Following the same readings you were chasing?" Mira said. "Strange pulses from under the ground. They have been happening every night for the past week. I think they are connected to the ruins." Thomas had heard rumors of the metallic ruins scattered across Sirel 4. Old structures half buried in sand and dust, older than any known civilization in human records. The scientists called them artifacts of an unknown builder race. The explorers called them traps. Mira took a small device from her belt and handed it to him. "This was in your pocket when I found you. It was still recording." Thomas examined it. The device was cracked, but the display flickered faintly. The last recorded reading showed an intense spike in energy right before the data cut off. "That spike must have been the flash I saw," Thomas said. Mira nodded. "It came from somewhere beyond the ridge. I was going to investigate, but then I found you. I thought you might have seen something before you lost consciousness." Thomas tried to remember. Flashes of light, shapes in the dust, and a low sound like the hum of deep machinery came to mind. But they were blurred, almost dreamlike. "Nothing clear," he admitted. "That is fine," Mira said. "You will remember when you are ready. For now, you rest. At sunrise, we will look for your crew." Thomas leaned back against the wall of the tent. The heat from the small heater eased the ache in his muscles. But his mind refused to rest. Something about her words bothered him. "You said I talked about you in my sleep," he said. "What exactly did I say?" Mira's eyes lingered on him for a moment before she answered. You said, Mira, they are waiting for us. And you said it more than once. He frowned. Waiting for us? Who? I do not know, she said. But the way you spoke, it sounded like you knew them. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the tent poles. Thomas finished the drink and set the cup down. He felt a strange pull in his chest, as if something beyond the ridge was calling to him. Mira noticed his expression. Do not think about it too much right now. Some places on this planet have a way of reaching into your mind. It is best not to let them pull you in too quickly. Thomas almost laughed. You make it sound like the planet is alive. Mira's gaze didn't change. Maybe it is, or maybe what is buried here is still awake. They sat in silence for a while. The soft hiss of the heater and the distant cry of wind were the only sounds. Thomas felt exhaustion return, heavier than before. His eyelids lowered, but not before he caught sight of Mira checking a scanner near the entrance. The screen showed a slow, steady pulse coming from the ridge. Just before sleep took him again, he thought he heard a faint voice in his head, whispering words he could not understand. The pale light of 2 moons faded as dawn began to spread across the plains of Sirel 4. Thomas woke to the sound of a light breeze tapping against the tent walls. His body felt better than the night before, though his thoughts were still heavy, with questions. Mira was already awake. She sat cross-legged near the tent entrance, cleaning a small energy pistol. She glanced at him. You slept longer than I expected. That is good. You will need your strength. Thomas rubbed his eyes and sat up. You said we would look for my crew at sunrise. Mira nodded and set the pistol aside. Yes, but before we go, you need to understand something. Out here, the planet will not harm you directly. The danger comes from what lies hidden and from what the mind believes it sees. Thomas frowned. What do you mean? She reached for her portable scanner and handed it to him. On the small screen, a map of the surrounding area was displayed. A faint pulse marked a spot beyond a ridge to the east. That is where I found you yesterday, she said. The readings there are unstable. Sometimes the energy spikes without warning. Other times there is nothing. I think your crew might have followed one of those spikes. Thomas studied the map. If they followed it, maybe they're close to that spot now. Maybe, Mira said. But there is something else. The locals avoid that area. They say the ruins there are not just old buildings. They are gates. Gates to what? They do not know. Or they will not say. Thomas tightened the straps of his gear. If my crew is anywhere near that place, we have to find them fast. Mira gave a short nod. Then we move. They stepped out of the tent into the cool morning air. The horizon glowed faintly with the first light of day. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, a sea of dusty plains broken only by scattered ruins of dark metal. The structures looked unnatural, with sharp edges and strange curves that seemed to catch the light in ways stone never could. As they walked, Thomas noticed the silence. Apart from the wind, there were no bird calls or insect sounds. The air felt still, as if holding its breath. How long have you been here? He asked. 3 weeks, Mira said. I came with a small transport ship. My mission was to investigate the ruins and report any signs of advanced technology. I have sent 2 reports already. This will be the last before I leave. Thomas glanced at her. So you were planning to leave soon? Yes, she said. But the signals from beneath the ridge changed my plans. They are different from any I have studied before. Stronger, more focused. It feels like they are meant for someone. They walked for nearly an hour before reaching the ridge. From the top, Thomas could see the land dip into a shallow valley. At its center stood the remains of what looked like a tower, its top broken and its surface covered in long scratches. The ground around it was marked with deep, circular grooves, as if something had rotated there long ago. Mira crouched low and scanned the area. Energy levels are high this morning. Something is active. Thomas knelt beside her. Do you see any tracks? She pointed to the right. In the dust, faint footprints led toward the tower. They were human, but mixed with other prints, wide and heavy, with deep claw marks. Thomas's pulse quickened. That's not my crew. No, Mira said. But whatever made those prints was here recently. We will move carefully. They descended into the valley, keeping close to the cover of broken metal walls. As they neared the tower, the air grew colder. Thomas felt a vibration under his boots, faint at first, but steadily increasing. Mira stopped and placed her hand on the ground. It is not the wind. Something below us is running. Thomas remembered the hum he had heard before he lost consciousness. I've felt this before, just before I blacked out. They reached the base of the tower. The entrance was a jagged opening, wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Inside, dim light revealed a spiral ramp leading downward. This is where it gets dangerous, Mira warned. If your crew came this way, we must move fast, but watch every step. Thomas gripped the handle of his sidearm. Let's go. They descended the ramp, the cold air wrapping around them. The walls were smooth metal, etched with patterns that glowed faintly. Thomas ran his hand along one of the carvings. It was warm to the touch. Do you know what these mean? He asked. Mira shook her head. The symbols are old. Some explorers think they are a record of trade or alliance. Others think they are warnings. They reached a landing halfway down when Thomas's earpiece crackled. A voice came through, faint and broken. Omas, this is... Stay moving. His heart jumped. That's my crew. Mira's eyes narrowed. The signal is coming from deeper below. That means your crew is near the source of the energy. They quickened their pace. The vibration underfoot grew stronger, and the glowing symbols brightened slightly. Thomas felt a strange pressure in his head, as if the air itself was pushing against his thoughts. Do you feel that? He asked. Yes, Mira said quietly. This place has a way of speaking without sound. At the bottom of the ramp, they entered a wide chamber. In the center stood a large circular platform covered in dust. Around it were tall pillars, each humming with the same faint vibration. Mira checked her scanner. Your crew's signal is coming from beyond that wall. She pointed to a sealed doorway on the far side. Thomas stepped toward it, but before he could reach it, a shadow moved between the pillars. The shape was tall and heavy, its eyes glowing faint blue. Mira drew her weapon. We are not alone. The figure stepped forward. Its surface was made of smooth, dark metal, shaped like armor, but without any visible joints. It stopped in front of the platform, staring at Thomas. The blue light in its eyes pulsed once, then again. Thomas's hand tightened on his weapon. What is that? Mira kept her aim steady. A guardian. Some ruins have them. They protect what lies inside. The guardian tilted its head slightly as if studying him. Then it spoke in a voice like grinding stone. You have returned. Thomas froze. He had never seen this machine before, yet the words felt familiar. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he felt he had stood here before. The vibration under their feet grew louder, and the sealed doorway behind the guardian began to open. The doorway behind the guardian slid open with a deep metallic sound. A rush of cold air flowed out, carrying with it the scent of dust and stone. Thomas could see a faint light beyond the opening, shifting like it came from something alive. The guardian stepped aside slowly, still keeping its glowing eyes on him. Its movement was smooth, almost human. Yet it had the weight and presence of a machine built for war. Mira lowered her weapon but did not put it away. It is letting us pass, she said in a quiet tone. But I do not know why. Thomas looked. at the Guardian one more time before stepping forward. We will find out. They crossed the platform and entered the passage. The walls here were different from the ones above. They were made of the same dark metal, but the carvings were deeper and more detailed. Some showed humans standing beside tall alien figures. Others showed stars and planets connected by long lines like a map of a vast network. Thomas slowed his pace, studying one image in particular. A human figure was reaching out toward a star, and a group of alien beings stood behind him. It looked less like a battle and more like a meeting. Mira noticed his interest. "Do you think humans were here before?" Thomas nodded slightly. "It looks that way, and if that is true, maybe the Guardian thinks I am connected to them somehow." They reached the end of the passage and stepped into a large open space. The ground was covered in a fine layer of pale dust. In it were footprints, many of them. Mira crouched down to study them. "These are fresh. Some belong to humans. The others—" She pointed to the larger prints, the ones with deep claws. "Those are not." Thomas scanned the ground. The human tracks were uneven, as if the people making them had been moving in a hurry. They led toward a tall archway on the far side of the room. The clawed prince followed close behind. His stomach tightened. "If my crew came this way, something was chasing them." Mira stood up. "Then we must be ready for whatever is still here." They followed the trail through the archway. Beyond it, the room narrowed into a tunnel. The air here felt heavier, and the faint hum in the floor had grown stronger. The tunnel curved gently, and at each turn they found more carvings. Some showed humans and aliens working together to build great towers. Others showed those towers breaking apart while ships fled into the stars. "This place is telling a story," Thomas said quietly. "But I do not know how it ends." Mira glanced at him. "Maybe we are walking toward the ending right now." The tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller than the first, but filled with strange objects. Tall pillars of glass stood in neat rows, each one filled with a faint mist. Shapes moved slowly inside the glass, though it was hard to tell if they were alive or only shadows. Thomas approached one of the pillars. The shape inside looked almost human, but slightly taller, with long arms and a narrow head. Its eyes were closed and its body did not move. Mira kept her distance. "Stasis pods," she said. "I have seen them in other ruins, but never this many. They could be hundreds of years old." As they moved between the pillars, a sound echoed from deeper inside the chamber. It was a slow, dragging noise, followed by a faint metallic click. Thomas and Mira froze. The noise came again, closer this time. From behind a row of pods, a tall creature stepped into view. Its body was covered in thick plates of chitin, and its arms ended in long, curved claws. Its eyes glowed with a faint orange light. Mira raised her weapon. "That is what made the claw prints." The creature tilted its head, studying them. Then it let out a low growl and began to move forward. Thomas's pulse raced. "We do not have time for this. My crew could be close." The creature stepped closer, claws scraping the floor. Mira fired a short burst of energy, and the creature leapt back with surprising speed. It let out a sharp cry, and the sound echoed through the chamber. From the shadows, more shapes began to move. Two more of the creatures emerged, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Mira backed toward the tunnel. "We cannot fight them all here. Move!" Thomas followed her quickly. The creatures advanced, but they did not chase them far. Instead, they stopped at the edge of the chamber, watching. Once they were back in the tunnel, Thomas caught his breath. "They did not follow us." "They are guarding something," Mira said. "Maybe your crew passed through and those things are keeping others out." They continued along the tunnel, moving faster now. The human footprints were still visible in the dust, but they were joined by strange marks on the walls, as if something had scraped along them. After several minutes, the tunnel began to slope upward. A faint light glimmered ahead, brighter than the glow of the carvings. When they reached the source, Thomas saw an opening leading to the outside. He stepped out and shielded his eyes from the light. They were on a high plateau, overlooking the valley they had crossed earlier. In the distance, he could see a group of small shelters made from dark metal panels. Mira checked her scanner. "I am picking up human life signs there. Weak, but steady." Thomas felt a surge of relief. That has to be them. They started toward the shelters, moving along a narrow path that wound down the plateau. The wind picked up, carrying the distant sound of something mechanical. As they neared the bottom, Thomas noticed more carvings on the rock walls beside the path. These were different, rougher, as if made in haste. They showed humans running from a collapsing tower, while large. Machines closed in around them. Mira slowed to look at them. It seems the story here did not end well for the ones who built this place. Thomas kept his eyes on the shelters ahead. Then maybe we can write a better ending. When they reached the valley floor, the air was cooler and the ground was soft with dust. Thomas's heart pounded as they approached the nearest shelter. He reached for the door and pulled it open. Inside, in the dim light, were 3 figures. 2 were sitting against the wall, their faces pale but alive. The third was lying on a blanket, eyes closed but breathing. "Thomas," one of them said weakly. "We thought we lost you." Relief washed over him. "I am here now. We will get you all out." Mira stepped inside and began checking their condition. "They need water and rest, but they will survive." Thomas glanced back toward the ridge they had crossed. The hum in the ground was still there, faint but steady. Somewhere in those ruins, something ancient was still awake. And, for reasons he did not yet understand, it knew him. Thomas spent the next hour helping Mira give the crew water and small portions of food. The 2 conscious members, Louis and Priya, were weak but able to speak. The third, a man named Harlan, was still unconscious, though his breathing was steady. Louis explained what had happened. "We followed a spike in the energy readings," he said. "It led us to a set of ruins near the ridge. We found a way underground. The tunnels went deeper than our maps showed. That is where we ran into them." "The creatures with claws," Thomas said. Louis nodded. "They chased us through the chambers. We lost contact with you when the readings overloaded our comms. We barely made it out before the door sealed behind us. Then we saw the shelters and hid here." Priya leaned forward, her voice weak but steady. "There is something else. Down there, before the creatures came, we found walls covered in carvings. They showed humans, not like us now, more like leaders, standing beside tall machines. It looked like we were in command." Mira's eyes narrowed. "That matches what Thomas and I saw earlier." Thomas glanced toward the direction of the ridge. "If the builders of this place were human allies, maybe those guardians are not our enemies. Maybe they are waiting for something. Or someone." Mira folded her arms. "If that is true, then the key to this mystery is still underground." They rested for another hour until Louis and Priya were strong enough to walk. Harlan remained, unconscious. So they made a stretcher from metal panels and fabric. Mira insisted that Thomas lead the way back to the ruins, following the same path they had taken earlier. By the time they reached the ridge again, the sun was sinking, casting long shadows over the plains. The air had grown colder, and the hum beneath their feet felt sharper, as if the ground itself was urging them to move faster. The guardian at the entrance was still there. It stood completely still, yet Thomas could feel its gaze on him. When they approached, it turned slightly and stepped aside, allowing them to pass without a word. Louis and Priya exchanged uneasy glances. "It just lets us in," Priya whispered. Thomas kept his eyes forward. "For now." They moved through the same passage as before. but this time they followed a different tunnel branching off from the first chamber. The air here was damp and cool, carrying the faint scent of metal and stone. The walls were lined with carvings, more detailed than any they had seen yet. One section caught Thomas's attention. It showed a group of humans standing in a circle around a sphere of light. Above them were tall alien figures, their hands extended in what looked like a gesture of respect. Beneath the scene were lines of symbols none of them could read. Mira studied the carvings closely. These are not battle scenes, they are records, agreements maybe. Lewis pointed to another carving further down. It showed ships leaving a planet, with humans aboard. Behind them, massive machines were closing giant doors in the sky. It looks like they were leaving to escape something, Lewis said. Priya frowned. Or they were being sent away for protection. The tunnel ended at a set of wide stairs leading deeper underground. As they descended, the faint hum in the ground grew louder, almost like a voice speaking at the edge of hearing. Thomas slowed his pace, trying to make sense of it. The sound was not random. It had a rhythm, like words in a language he almost understood. When they reached the bottom, they stepped into a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The ceiling was high and arched, supported by tall, metal pillars covered in glowing lines. In the center was a platform holding a large crystal-like structure that pulsed with soft blue light. Around the platform stood 4 more guardians, each motionless but alert. The moment Thomas stepped forward, the light in the crystal brightened. Priya whispered, "It reacts to you." Mira glanced at him. "Say something. Anything." Thomas hesitated, then spoke the words from his dream. Covenant of the First. Dawn. The chamber changed instantly. The pillars lit up in sequence, and the hum in the floor became a clear tone. The guardians all turned to face him, their glowing eyes steady. From the crystal, a voice spoke, not mechanical, but deep and calm. "You have returned," it said. "The line endures." Thomas felt a chill run through him. "Who are you?" "We are the Keepers," the voice replied. "We hold the memory of the First Alliance, when your kind and ours built the gates to protect the worlds. The time has come to awaken them again." Mira stepped forward. "If this alliance was real, why was it forgotten?" The voice was silent for a moment. Then it said, "The memory was hidden to protect you. The enemy still searches. But now they draw near again. The gates must be opened." Thomas felt as if the air itself had grown heavier. "What enemy?" The crystal pulsed. "The ones who broke the sky. The ones who would unmake all worlds. They are coming." Lewis glanced nervously at Priya. "This is sounding worse by the minute," the voice continued. "The humans who once stood here were leaders and builders. You are their descendant. The knowledge locked within these halls is yours to claim, if you choose it." Thomas took a step toward the crystal. "What would I have to do?" "Speak the command," the voice said, "and the gates will open." Mira touched his arm. "Think before you answer. If the gates open, it could bring help or danger." Thomas looked at his crew, at their tired faces and the dust-covered walls around them. Something deep inside told him that this was more than a choice for himself. It was a choice for all of humanity. Before he could answer, the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling and a deep roar echoed through the tunnels. From somewhere beyond the chamber came the sound of claws scraping metal. Mira drew her weapon. "The creatures are coming!" The guardians turned toward the noise, their weapons unfolding from their arms. The crystal's voice grew firm. "Decide, now, human. Will you stand as your ancestors did?" Thomas met Mira's gaze. She gave a short nod. Then he turned to the crystal and spoke the command that had been forming in his mind since he first stepped into these ruins. "I will stand." The crystal flared with brilliant light, and the hum became a deep, resonating call. Somewhere far away, something massive began to move. After Thomas spoke the words, the chamber filled with bright light. The sound of the hum became strong, almost like a heartbeat. The glowing crystal pulsed faster, sending waves of energy through the room. The Guardians moved smoothly, forming a circle around the platform, their eyes shining brighter than before. Thomas felt a strange sensation in his mind. At first it was like a soft breeze, then it grew stronger, like a voice calling to him from far away. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was not standing in the chamber anymore. He saw himself in another place, a vast hall made of shining metal and glass. Tall figures stood around him. They were taller than humans, with long limbs and smooth faces, but their eyes were kind. Thomas felt calm and strong. He heard words spoken in a language he could not understand, but somehow he knew their meaning. They spoke of peace, of protection, and of a promise to keep the world safe. Then he saw a circle of humans, wearing simple robes, standing beside the tall figures. They were the first humans to stand in alliance with these beings, builders of great gates that connected planets. Thomas felt as if the memories were his own, yet he knew they belonged to someone else. The vision faded, and Thomas opened his eyes. He was back in the chamber, but everything looked sharper, clearer. Mira and the others watched him closely. "What did you see?" Mira asked softly. Thomas shook his head slowly. "It was like a memory, but not mine. It was a time long before us. Humans working with those tall beings, protecting the gates." Lewis looked around nervously. "Are you saying humans once had this kind of power?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, and it seems the Guardians still remember that alliance. They recognize me because of it." The crystal's light dimmed, but stayed bright enough to fill the room. Then a low rumble echoed from the tunnels beyond. "We do not have much time," Mira said. "Those creatures are coming. They want to stop whatever we have started." Thomas clenched his fists. "Then we have to find my crew and get out of here before it's too late." Mira nodded and motioned toward a narrow passage that led deeper, underground. "The Guardians will guide us. They protect what lies beyond." The group moved cautiously through the tunnels, the glowing symbols lighting their way. As they walked, Thomas kept feeling the pull in his mind, the same feeling as before, but stronger. It was like the planet was trying to speak with him. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a large room filled with rows of strange pods. Some were cracked and empty, but many still held figures inside, humans and other beings, all in stasis. Mira approached one of the pods and examined the control panel. "These pods hold the original builders and their allies," she explained. "They went into stasis to survive a great war." Thomas walked among the pods, looking at the faces frozen in time. One pod near the center held a man who looked strikingly familiar to him, same features, same eyes. His heart quickened. Before he could say anything, a loud clang echoed through the chamber. The clawed creatures were coming. The Guardians positioned themselves between the group and the entrance, weapons raised and ready. Thomas took a deep breath and said, "We will protect them. We will protect this place." Mira looked at him with respect. "You are no longer just a survivor. You are a leader." The creatures crashed into the chamber. The Guardians fought fiercely, their movements precise and powerful. Thomas and his crew stayed behind the Guardians, trying to stay safe. In the heat of the battle, Thomas felt the strange pull in his mind again. This time, it was clearer. He heard words, "Stand strong, remember who you are." The words filled him with courage. He stepped forward and shouted to his team, "Hold your ground. We will not let this place fall." The battle raged, but slowly the creatures began to retreat, unable to break the Guardians' defense. When silence returned, Mira checked on the crew. Harlan was awake and stable now. The others were shaken, but unharmed. Thomas looked at the pods, again, then back to the glowing crystal. He understood now. This was not just a mission to find his lost crew. It was a mission to restore humanity's place in the galaxy. Mira smiled and said, "The memory of the first alliance is alive in you. It is time to stand for the future." Thomas nodded. "We will be ready." The battle had left the chamber silent except for the soft hum of the glowing crystal. Thomas and his team stood among the rows of stasis pods, the weight of what they had seen and experienced settling on them all. The clawed creatures had retreated, but Thomas knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. This place was too important to be abandoned. Mira looked at Thomas with a serious expression. "We cannot stay here. The Guardians can protect the chamber for a while, but we need to understand more about these pods and the builders." Thomas nodded. "We need answers. This place holds a part of our past, and maybe our future." As they prepared to move deeper, into the ruins, a low vibration ran through the floor. The lights on the crystal flickered and shifted colors. The Guardians around the room began to move, their eyes glowing brighter and their weapons lowering but still ready. Suddenly, a new figure appeared at the entrance of the chamber. It was taller than the other Guardians, with sleek armor that shimmered like dark glass. Its faceplate was smooth and reflective, but its eyes burned with a fierce blue light. Mira took a step back. "I have never seen one like this before." Thomas felt a strange calm despite the sudden appearance. The new Guardian moved forward with confidence, scanning the group carefully. It stopped near Thomas and lowered its head slightly in a gesture of respect. The Guardian spoke, its voice deep and resonant, but without emotion. "I am the Sentinel of the Covenant. I have come to guide you." Thomas looked at Mira, then back to the Guardian. "Guide us? To where?" The Sentinel's eyes pulsed as it replied, "There is a chamber beyond this place, hidden from most. It contains the knowledge and technology needed to awaken the gates fully." Mira's curiosity grew. "Why did you come now?" The Sentinel's voice was steady. "Because the threat grows. The enemy returns, and only the Alliance can stop them." Thomas stepped forward. "What enemy?" The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter as it explained. "Long ago, a force shattered the peace among the stars. They destroyed worlds and sought to control all life. The Builders and humans formed a pact to protect against this threat. But the memory was lost, and the gates sealed. Now that darkness rises again." Mira exchanged a glance with Thomas. "We need to reach that chamber before it is too late." The Sentinel motioned toward a narrow corridor that had been hidden behind a wall. The passage was old but still intact, carved with ancient symbols glowing softly. "Follow me," the Guardian commanded. The group gathered their gear and followed the Sentinel down the hidden path. The walls on either side showed more carvings, telling the story of the First Alliance, the Builders and humans working together, fighting side by side, building great gates to protect their worlds. Thomas felt a deep connection to the images, as if the stories were reaching inside his soul. He could almost hear the voices of those who came before him. After a long walk, they reached a massive door covered with bright symbols. The Sentinel stopped and placed its hand on the surface. The symbols glowed and the door began to open, revealing a large chamber filled with devices and machines unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. Mira stepped inside carefully. "This is incredible." The chamber was filled with floating panels, holograms of star maps, and large mechanisms that seemed to pulse with energy. At the center was a pedestal holding a glowing orb. The Sentinel approached the pedestal. "This orb contains the core memory of the Alliance. It holds the secrets to unlock the gates and awaken the Builders." Thomas walked forward, reaching out to touch the orb. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a wave of energy passed through him. Images and voices flooded his mind. visions of battles, peace treaties, great discoveries, and warnings. He saw humans standing tall, proud, and fearless, working with the builders to protect the galaxy. He saw the moment the enemy attacked, forcing the Alliance to seal away their power to keep it safe. Then he saw the present, a warning that the enemy was returning, stronger and more determined than ever. Thomas gasped and stepped back. Me.HFY caught his arm. "Are you all right?" He nodded, breathing heavily. "We have to prepare. This is not just a fight for survival. It's a fight for everything humanity once stood for." The Sentinel's eyes glowed brighter. "The knowledge here can give you strength, but it requires sacrifice and courage." Me.HFY looked at Thomas, her voice steady. "Are you ready?" Thomas looked around at his team, the Guardians, and the ancient machines. He thought of the lost crew members, the mystery of the ruins, and the future that awaited them. "I am ready," he said firmly. The chamber filled with light as the orb's energy spread throughout the room. The gates, hidden far beneath the planet's surface, began to hum to life. Thomas felt the weight of the past and the hope of the future resting on his shoulders. The Alliance was waking. Humanity's forgotten strength was rising again. The deep hum of the gates echoed through the tunnels beneath Sirel 4. Thomas stood before the massive doors, their surfaces glowing with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Around him, the Guardians waited silently, and his team stood close, tired but ready. The glowing orb in the chamber had awakened the ancient technology, but Thomas knew this was only the beginning. The enemy that had once shattered the peace among the stars was returning, and the gates were the last hope to protect their world and many others. Me.HFY checked her scanner and nodded. "The energy levels are rising. Whatever is coming is close." Thomas took a deep breath. "Then we open the gates." He raised his hand and spoke the command he had learned from the crystal and the visions. "By the covenant of the first dawn, I call the gates to open." The doors responded instantly. Runes of light raced across the surface, and the massive gates slowly began to part, revealing a swirling portal of shimmering energy beyond. From within the portal came a deep roar, a sound like thunder mixed with the cry of a wild beast. The ground trembled as a dark shadow moved through the swirling light. Suddenly, the enemy appeared. Towering machines of black metal and red glowing cores poured out from the portal like a wave. Their shapes were sharp and brutal, designed for destruction. They had claws, blades, and weapons that hummed with deadly power. Thomas raised his weapon and shouted to his team, "Hold the line! Protect the gates at all costs!" The Guardians stepped forward, their weapons blazing with bright energy. The battle began with a clash of metal and light. The Guardians fought fiercely, their movements precise and unyielding. Thomas and Me.HFY led their team against the machines, their courage and skill shining through the chaos. The enemy machines were powerful, but the Guardians and humans fought as one, moving with the strength of those who knew they were protecting something greater than themselves. As the battle raged, Thomas felt the strength of the Alliance flow. Through him, the memory of the builders and the courage of the first humans who had stood against darkness. He fought with a fierce determination, never faltering. Me.HFY called out, "Thomas! The portal is unstable. If it collapses, the enemy will be trapped here, but so will we." Thomas looked toward the swirling gate, seeing the energy falter and crack. He knew the choice he had to make. "We have to close it," he said. "But we must make sure none of them escape." The Guardians formed a barrier around the gate, their energy weapons firing waves of light to hold the machines back. Thomas and Me.HFY moved to the control pedestal, ready to activate the seal. With a final look at his team, Thomas placed his hands on the controls and spoke the command to close the gates. The energy around them surged, and the portal began to shrink, pulling the enemy machines back inside. The roar grew louder, then faded as the portal sealed shut with a brilliant flash of light. The heavy doors of the gate slowly closed, and the hum of ancient power quieted. Silence filled the chamber. The battle was over. Thomas turned to his team, seeing exhaustion and relief on their faces. "We did it," he said softly. "We held the line." Mira smiled. "This place, these guardians, the knowledge we have found. It is all a reminder of what humanity can do when it stands together." Lewis stepped forward. "We were lost, but now we are found. We have a chance to rebuild, to protect more than just this planet." Priya looked at Thomas. "You carried the memory of the first alliance. You gave us hope." Thomas felt a quiet pride, but also a heavy responsibility. This is only the beginning. The gates are open now and others will come. We must be ready. The guardians gathered around the crystal orb, their lights dimming to a peaceful glow. Mira said, "We have awakened an ancient power, but it is ours to shape. The future belongs to those who dare to stand." Thomas looked out through the chamber entrance toward the bright horizon of Sorel 4. The sun was rising, casting light on a world full of possibilities. He took a deep breath and smiled. "We will stand. We will protect. We will rise." The gates of dawn had opened, and humanity's place among the stars was ready to shine once more.